Here we are.
Good evening. We want to welcome everyone to the Fertility for Colored Girls Egg Donation and Surrogacy Google Hangout on this evening. We are so excited that you have taken time out of your schedule to spend some time with us and learn more about egg donation as well as surrogacy. We'd like to welcome tonight with us Nancy from Center for Egg Options, Nancy Block, and also Eloise from Family Inceptions. Nancy is from Chicago. She's located in Chicago, and Eloise works in Atlanta. However, they work with people all over this country, helping them to build families. We're very grateful for both of them and all of the amazing work that they both do regard in this area of fertility and in helping people build families. And we also like to thank Bridget, our moderator for tonight, who will help to moderate and lead this discussion. So we say thank you, ladies, for joining us. We say thank you to all of our viewers who have joined in on tonight. And we also like to thank little Shiloh. She says hi to everyone as well as Simba. And they too say thank you for joining us tonight. God bless you. And ladies, we look forward to an awesome discussion.
Thank you.
Fantastic, fantastic. Well, thank you, Reverend Stacy. Thank you, Shiloh and Simba, for making an appearance tonight. It is so good to see you all. As Reverend Stacy mentioned, my name is Bridget, and I'm on the Fertility for Colored Girls PR team. And we'd like to welcome you to tonight's egg donation and surrogacy webinar. So we invite you to take notes and hear from the wonderful ladies we have to present on tonight. I am going to let Nancy and Eloise tell you a little bit more about themselves before we go to a presentation that Nancy has prepared. So let's start with Miss Eloise Drain. Tell us a little bit more about you.
Hi everyone, my name is Eloise Drain and I am the owner of Family Inceptions International in Atlanta. I have personally been a 3-time surrogate as well as an egg donor several times, and I offer services in egg donation and surrogacy domestically, but I also do it internationally. So I work in various countries doing surrogacy and egg donation as well.
Fantastic. Awesome. Thank you for being here. We appreciate it. And Miss Nancy Block, tell us a little bit more about your work.
Hi, everyone. I am a former OB and infertility nurse. I started an egg donor and surrogacy program in Chicago 15 years ago, and we work with anonymous and known egg donors as well as gestational surrogates. I work with a team of nurses, previous surrogates, previous donors, as well as counselors, attorneys, and physicians. We offer referrals, we offer references. Eloise and I have known each other for quite some time, and it's actually really a very nice thing that we can all kind of collaborate and help each other to make all of the people who want to have a family able to have a family.
Fantastic, fantastic. Thank you for joining us. Definitely looking forward to it. So right now we are going to actually go to the presentation that Ms. Nancy is going to guide us through. So a few housekeeping tips for our guest. We will have a question and answer session toward the end. You should be able to type your answers, type your questions rather, in the little Q&A panel. And we'll kind of deal with that toward the end. This is our first time using Google Hangouts, so we're excited to see how this turns out, and definitely looking forward to learning this new technology. So bear with us. We are also very excited that there will be a recording of this webinar available as well. So without further ado, we will start with Ms. Nancy's presentation, and just bear with me while I find it in all of my screens here. Here we go. go back around here to make sure I'm presenting to everyone. Okay, how does that look? Can you see that? Miss Nancy, see that okay?
Yes, I can.
All right, fantastic. So again, welcome to the Egg Donation and Surrogacy webinar, where we have Miss Nancy Block and Miss Eloise Drain, both of whom are going to talk to us about egg donation and surrogacy. So without further ado, I am going to start this presentation. All right, Miss Nancy.
How to select an egg donor. I think, now I know I need my glasses. Sorry about that.
No problem.
There are some things to think about when you're looking for an egg donor as an intended parent or intended parent couple. Are you looking for an anonymous or known egg donor? Anonymous means just that. You don't know your donor, you don't meet your donor. Known can mean that you do meet her or you talk to her through a conference line. It's not for everybody, but it's an option. And people are doing that more and more now. Are you looking for a physical match? Are you looking for a repeat donor? Are you looking for an ethnically diverse donor? If your background between you and your partner is diverse, are you looking for something that matches both of you? Do you need assistance in your search? Because most of the agencies that do this type of work are very willing to help you. You don't necessarily need an outside consultant. You can work with an agency. You can choose not to work with an agency. We feel it's best to work with an agency, obviously, because there are so many details that are very difficult to navigate. You can also work with your clinic. Many clinics offer their own donor programs. Some are a little more limited than others, depending on what ethnicity you're looking for. And most agencies and most doctors' offices who do recruit donors have pictures. They will show you current photos. They will show you childhood photos. You can always ask for more as well. I think we can go to the next slide. Old versus new. This talks about years ago what people thought of. Eloise and I have been doing this for quite some time, but years ago there weren't very many agencies, and what people mostly looked for was an agency match, not necessarily the match with the right donor or the right surrogate. They were looking at the agency first, and now I think people are extremely savvy. The media has really heightened all of the infertility issues that have gone on with the stars and people in the media. And now people, I think, are looking for the right donor more so than the agency. Selecting the right donor seems to be the primary concern today. The numbers of egg donors has increased significantly since I've been doing this. People talk about egg donation. Egg donation is less stigmatized. It's just another way to create a family. There are many ways to have a family, and egg donation is one of them. More and more young women are applying to be donors, and simply because it's kind of a win-win situation for many. They are able to save money, pay off college debt, do something good with the money. Some give back even. More regulation and guidelines are apparent now, and we also want to make sure that our donors are protected when they're taken care of by the doctors. IPs mean intended parents are more comfortable with this way of family building because people are talking about it. So we do offer more choices in the industry. Some of the questions you might want to ask an agency are, what type of evaluations are done with the donor ahead of time? Do they do a psychosocial eval? Do they offer genetic consultations? Do they offer referrals for attorneys? If you're working with a donor, what information is provided? Is she previous donor? can people view current photos, previous photos, childhood photos. We talked about anonymous versus known. Information about what the donor will know about the couple that she's working with. Basically, unless it's a known situation, the only thing a donor will know is who the doctor is and that you need her help. What happens if the donor backs out? This will vary from agency to agency. Most do offer another donor, and there shouldn't be significant charges. How is the donor compensated? Donors are compensated in most agencies according to the guidelines, so compensation shouldn't exceed $10,000, and many will be below $10,000. And you'll want to know and ask your agency how she's compensated and really what fees are covered by your agency or clinic. Medical fees are generally not covered by the agency. Financial considerations, this is as far as gestational surrogacy. Even with egg donors, this is a huge, huge barrier to many people doing third-party reproductive cycles. It's very important to get as much information as you can ahead of time so that there aren't any hidden costs. But when someone is considering working with a gestational surrogate, and if they work with an agency, which we feel is in everyone's best interest, some of the fees, including medical, can encompass the $100,000 mark. I know with what Eloise does, some of those fees can be minimized depending on what countries you would go to, and I'm sure Eloise can probably discuss that further. But you want to ask all the questions. Everything should be in writing. Compensation and travel expenses can overstretch someone's, what we call budget. Not that this is a budget. Agency fees are separate. Legal fees are separate. Insurance fees are separate. Cycle fees are separate. Anything at the doctor's office is billed separately. You want to make sure that your surrogate is living in a surrogate-friendly state. They will vary. And there are some states that really don't permit or make it very difficult to work with a surrogate legally and make it very difficult for the parents to obtain a birth certificate. So you'd certainly want to check that out with the agency and always ask agency for referrals. Insurance coverage for a surrogate will vary significantly. I talk about this every day with people. There is something called an insurance exclusion, which means that if your surrogate's insurance has an exclusion that says that she can't be a surrogate, can't be someone using a host uterus, can't do third-party cycles, can't get paid for doing something like this, that's pretty much a clear exclusion. The attorney that you work with, and a good agency will give you referrals for attorneys as well. They will enlighten you as to what the insurance policy says. Most agencies get a complete copy of the surrogate's insurance ahead of time so that you can be prepared and there are fewer unknowns. It's very important to find out as much as you can so that when you decide to select or speak to a potential surrogate, you know if her insurance will cover it. If her insurance doesn't, there are certain options that you can purchase, pay out of pocket, which I know sounds crazy, but all of the hospitals and doctors do discount their fees for those that have self-pay stipulations. And I know, Bridget, you wanted me to talk about some of these, but in how much detail would you like me to discuss this?
I think we'll go through the presentation and then see what kind of questions that we have. I know that questions we get a lot usually surround the fees. So I think that is probably something that we can maybe circle back to once we get into the Q&A.
Okay. So selecting a surrogate. Should she be married? She does not have to be married, but she does need a significant other. That could be a mom, a significant other, a partner, a boyfriend, girlfriend, family member, anyone that is there for her if she needs them during pregnancy that she can count on. The agency should inform you how many pregnancies she has had, what those pregnancies resulted in. Were they a live birth? Were they an NSVD, normal spontaneous vaginal delivery? Did she have a C-section? Did she have miscarriages? Did she have stillborns? Did she have any high-risk factors involved in her pregnancies? Any twins, multiples? Most of us don't want people getting pregnant with multiples repeatedly. And we also need and do check all of her medical records from her prenatal visits as well as her delivery records, because the surrogate may not know if she had a blood transfusion, let's say right after delivery with twins, because she forgot about it. Things like that will be in her medical records, and they're important. It's also helpful if your agency has some medical personnel either to consult with or on staff. And we also are required, the FDA does require several things for surrogates, some of which are medical clearance by her OB stating that she's healthy and that she can carry a pregnancy as a surrogate without increased risk to her health. Current pap smear, want to make sure that she is healthy, want to make sure that she gets normal periods, want to make sure reproductive organs are all intact. And then the OB, infertility doctor, will do an ultrasound and lab work prior to her being accepted as a surrogate for a particular intended parent.
Okay, awesome.
Oh gosh, I can't read this.
Okay.
Okay. What intended parents know about third-party cycles? It's really very, very important to know what your state allows. I am in Illinois. We work with clients from all over the world, basically, and I work with surrogates in surrogate-friendly states. We can work with an egg donor, and you can work with a sperm donor, but you can't work with both and a surrogate. There are a few states, a handful of states, if you're working with an egg donor and a sperm donor, where you can work with a surrogate. California's one, Colorado's one, but certainly not every state will allow that. Intended parents, IPs, need a physician's affidavit stating the medical reason a patient needs to work with a surrogate. You don't need that in California, you need that in Illinois. You have to have a medical reason. It doesn't mean that you can't do it, even if it's repeated miscarriage. Whatever your doctor feels is pertinent, that doctor will fill out paperwork and send it to your attorney. An agency or individual should not proceed with surrogacy in a state where it's prohibited. There are still many states that are not friendly, and it also depends on the parents who are working with that surrogate. If they're a traditional couple, it's probably easier to do parentage paperwork in most states. Suitable surrogates should either be working with a first-rate agency or a competent legal expert with experience in third-party cycles. Everyone should be represented by someone who's not contracted with the agency. Reasons some surrogates won't work with an agency, there are definitely some reasons. Some of them have to do, and Eloise, you can probably chime in here too, but some of them may have to do with 1099s. Some surrogates do not want a 1099, and that's fine, but many agencies, unless they work with independent escrow, are required to send a 1099. Some surrogates have been disqualified based on certain guidelines, and some people want to go around the system. there are some surrogates with a history of criminal offenses that an agency would object to, or she resides in a state that's not surrogacy friendly. She would like to earn more than the recommended allowance or the recommended compensation. We just don't want anyone taken advantage of. And then there are some surrogates who just love to be pregnant and want to be pregnant all the time and have 10, 11, 12 pregnancies. And for me, being a former OB and fertility nurse, I think that that's dangerous medically. Can you think of anything else, Eloise?
Well, hearing from other surrogates and have asked questions why they would like to go independent, touched on the biggest concern is that they can't pass screening through an agency. Some truly want to just feel that, they don't want to have to work with an agency so that intended parents don't have to pay extra for an agency.
Right.
But, I think for a lot of people, they're only looking at, well, the agency is an extra cost. Yes, that obviously is true. However, there's a lot of legwork up front that the agency does to help so that the intended parents don't have any problems at the end, or even during the pregnancy. So it's not because, it's just another added cost. It is an important cost because we make sure that the person that is going to be assisting you throughout this journey is capable, emotionally, physically, mentally, in all aspects. She is a good candidate. That if you went independently, you couldn't find somebody, but it is also taking a risk.
Also, I think, there are situations that come up, and you can probably agree with me, I would assume, where you really need a third party. Even if people get along, sometimes you just need the voice of reason and someone to think in a non-emotional way, just to point out the facts and scenarios so that you can come to conclusions and decisions that, after some investigation, make good sense. And, when you're in this, you're emotional, of course, and you don't want to offend anybody. And IPs are usually looking for a source to help them communicate with a surrogate so that no one is upset or offended. You kind of walk on eggshells in the beginning. You want to make sure that your surrogate who's carrying your baby is happy. And the surrogate doesn't want to offend anybody else either. And, obviously I've seen, and I'm sure you have too, scenarios where people thank God that there's an agency. It's the very few surrogacies that go by without any hiccups. And so it's significantly helpful to have a third party there. I don't know how people navigate it without it. There are so many details. I couldn't imagine doing it, and I do it.
Excellent. Definitely some things to think about. Some really, really great information there. Okay, and this is another hot topic. We touched on this a little bit, but insurance. What else should we need to know? Well, where to start with insurance?
Insurance is unfortunately such a big piece of this. I think it's very important for the agency or whomever you work with to get a copy of the insurance policy that the surrogate has. Not just the brief summary, but the entire insurance policy, and we do get those. They're over 100 pages long. We look for exclusions in either the fertility section or general exclusions. And we also give a copy of the insurance policy to each of the attorneys who are representing the intended parents, as well as the surrogate and her husband or partner, if any. It is exceedingly important, but a lot of the insurance, what they call exclusions, are they're not necessarily fact-based. Some of them are risk-based. So what that means is people will interpret, attorneys will interpret certain exclusions as something that's definitely a no-go and you must purchase the other insurance policy. And then some of the attorneys will recommend to their clients, no, you know, it's probably okay. It's low risk. The insurance will probably pay for the pregnancy. At a minimum, many agencies will require that the intended parents take out a policy that is, it's not expensive by these standards, to take out a policy as a backup, just in case there is a problem and her insurance won't pay for a complication. But there is also comprehensive insurance that some of there are two insurance companies that will insure a surrogate, but some of these insurance companies will encourage parents to take out. They're very expensive. And what we encourage, and I'm not sure what you do, Eloise, but for non-international clients, we really do encourage people to negotiate a rate with the doctor in the hospital, which is generally 25 to 35% off the normal rate, and then buy the backup insurance in case there's a complication. And we get those numbers directly from the hospital in black and white, and that seems to be what most people are doing and more cost effective than the comprehensive insurance, which can run, you know, $25,000 to $40,000, depending on if you have one baby or two.
Okay.
And that's not for the babies. The babies are insured on mom and dad's insurance, or mom's insurance, or dad's insurance once they're born. But this is strictly for the surrogate, for the pregnancy. It has nothing to do with the IVF either.
Okay.
So I guess the bottom line is you can't really answer many of these questions until you know who the surrogate is, until you know what her policy says, and what your level of risk is.
Definitely. Okay. All right.
Frozen egg cycles. This is definitely something that's kind of newer on the forefront. Many of the couples that we work with, even if they're working with a surrogate, will choose to work with a donor who has donated her eggs already. So time constraints with some people, or if they don't have insurance, some of the costs are a little more cost effective for those who are looking for frozen eggs. Or you're just in a hurry and you want to choose frozen eggs, you don't want to have to wait to cycle with an egg donor, because an egg donor cycle in most areas will take about 3 months from start to finish, from the time you choose her until the time that there's a retrieval and transfer. But if you choose to work with someone who's already donated their eggs, they're frozen, they're eggs. They will need to be fertilized with sperm, and then they can be transferred into either intended mom's uterus or a host uterus, depending on what the situation is. There are definite advantages for both and disadvantages for both. I think, you know, the biggest advantage for someone to do a frozen egg donor cycle is that you can find your eggs and have them sent to you, you know, quickly. You don't have to wait. It's costly. Some states have insurance. Some states have insurance mandates. So if your insurance covers an egg donor, they don't generally cover frozen eggs. So you might want to check with your insurance carrier. There are a handful of states that will work with your egg donor. They will pay the medical costs. They won't pay the agency fee, and they generally don't pay the compensation, but they generally will pay for the medical costs of IVF. So if you choose to work with an egg donor who has frozen eggs, some of the egg banks sell like a lot of 6 eggs for approximately $18,000. Sounds like an awful lot of money. It does include the IVF. The success rates are lower with frozen eggs, but for many people, they choose to do that, and it works for them. There are disadvantages for the egg donor. I'm not certain that we need to go into that at this point, but if you do work with frozen eggs, you most likely will not get future health information from that egg donor. If you work with an egg donor, usually through an agency, you will get future health information so that you can share that with your child if you so choose. Your family history is important, her family history is important, and if there are medical concerns in the future, you can contact each other, usually through the agency, so that if you have a child as an egg donor recipient and your child has a genetic anomaly, you can contact the agency. The agency can then contact the donor and ask her to maybe submit to some blood work. It doesn't mean that anyone's blaming anyone. It's just a helpful medical opportunity for those who have children, and for those of us who've been in this industry for a long time, this has come up, and it's important. Next slide. Evolving medical technology. Over the last 15 years, as long as I've been doing this, medical protocols have improved. Medications have improved. Processes are streamlined. There's better genetic testing. The FDA is now involved with regulations so that in most cases when you're working with a doctor and an agency, all of the regulations are followed and genetic screening is done. Insurance coverage in some states is available. There are more donors and surrogates, and I think a lot of it has to do with the media surrounding third-party cycles, and it is a win-win situation. And you know, I don't know if any of you remember, but you know, there was a little economic downturn, like in 2006, and there were a swarm of egg donors wanting to donate, and I think that kind of evolved into something big. There are more same-sex couples able to have families, more people are able to get married, better legal agreements, and certainly more qualified attorneys working in art-assisted reproductive technology. And it's for those people who are going through this in the beginning, it's amazing what you don't know, but what you learn through all of the people who have been doing this for a long time.
Awesome. Okay, thank you, Nancy. We really appreciate that information. And of course, we are going to go into a discussion right now, and take some of your questions. But right now, we do have contact information there on the screen for Nancy with the Center for Egg Option Illinois and the Donor Network Alliance. You can reach her at nancy@egg411.com. For Eloise with Family Inceptions International, you can reach her via phone at 678-473-4865 or at eloise@familyinceptions.com. And of course, you can always reach us, Fertility for Colored Girls, at fertilityforcoloredgirls.org or at info@fertilityforcoloredgirls.org. And we will make sure that you have all that contact information as well as the information from tonight's webinar. And now we are going to go back to our screen here. And, oh, there I am. Hello, everyone, again. And we're going to see if we have some questions. And ladies, we're also going to talk about some of the most common questions that you get, or some of the most common perception that you run into surrounding this. Both of you ladies have been in this field for a long time, whereas some of us have just been hearing about this in the past year or so. Nancy, you've been in for 15 years. Eloise has been in for several years. So I'm just really excited about the information that you're going to share. So first, I will start with Nancy. What do you think some of the most common attitudes that you see surrounding egg donor and surrogacy now versus 10 years ago, 15 years ago when you first started?
Well, I think, you know, I don't want to minimize my experience in any way. I think Eloise is probably also like really helpful at answering that too because she's gone through this. But from my perspective, I see that people talk about this. That's the big difference. It's it was very hush hush when I started. This makes me sound so old, but we didn't have the internet. We didn't email profiles. We talked to people. We actually met people in person, intended parents. We always meet the donors in person, but we we now do everything, a lot of things, through email and through Skype and through webinars and through, non-hands-on. And that to me is, it's kind of a, it's a big thing. If it were me and I was going through this, I would want to meet who I'm working with. I would want not just necessarily the donor, but the company that I was working with, and it's very different than it used to be now. It's almost like remote parenting in a way, and that surprises me. But obviously, the people who come to the agencies get good referrals from their doctors or their friends or some even the internet, and they trust who they're giving thousands of dollars to. Um, and that, to me, is a little more surprising. I think I'm a little old-fashioned, but um, that's, I think, what's changed most.
All right. And Eloise, what would you say in your time working in the field? And you've been a surrogate yourself, yes?
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk a little bit about that. You've got definitely a unique experience. So let's talk a little bit about first what you've seen change, and then just share with us a little bit about your experience as a surrogate.
Okay. So for me, I think what I've seen change. So I came into actually started as an egg donor in 1999, and when I first decided that I wanted to become an egg donor, I contacted an agency, and I was told that there was no need for African American egg donors. And so they told me that it was going to take quite some time to find a intended parent that needed an African American egg donor, and it actually took them about 9 months to find someone to match me. After that experience, I did not like my first experience, but I did decide to do it again. And there happened to be it was a website at the time where it was kind of like a classified, and you could put your information out there, and there was a whole bunch of people putting information in that they were looking for certain donors, and so I decided to put my information out there, and when I did, I was inundated with emails for people who needed African American egg donors. And from when I started back then to now, I think the biggest difference is education. I think that people are much more educated now than when previously, because, I mean, just like I said, in 1999, I was told by an agency owner that African American women didn't need egg donors, that there was really no need. So for me, that was a big thing. And I decided to become a surrogate in 2007. Well, really step back. In 2006, I was working with a surrogacy agency. They did not have an egg donor program, so I started working with them to start the donor program for them, and that's when I learned about surrogacy, and I decided that, hey, I have easy pregnancies. I love being pregnant, so why not? Um, what I didn't realize at the time was that my husband had to also be on board. And when I came to him and I said I wanted to be a surrogate, he pretty much looked at me like I was crazy. So it actually took almost a year for him to really understand why I wanted to do it, and for him to be okay with it, and for me to kind of educate him about the process. Um, and it wasn't just him that I had to educate. I had to educate him. I had to educate my own children. I had to educate my own family, my mom, my dad, my sisters. Because for a lot of people, the thought of surrogacy, the only thing that they really knew was more of a traditional surrogacy sense than a gestational surrogacy sense, whereby traditional surrogacy, you're using that surrogate's egg as well as her uterus, and in surrogacy where you're just using the surrogate's uterus. So once I finally got everybody on board, then everybody was very um, they were just fine with it. My husband, of course, his biggest thing was my health, my concern, the concern of our kids and how it would affect them. But honestly, and I have a lot of surrogates tell me the same thing, is really look at it as this is something so unselfish for you to do for somebody else. Um, and my kids just got to a point where when I would tell them I'm doing surrogacy again, they're just like, okay, fine.
How many times have you done it now?
3.
3 times. Wow. Okay.
The third was the final. I promise.
Third one. Okay. Third time was the charm. Okay. How did you start that conversation with your family or with your husband? Was it just casual? Like, hey, I want to talk to you about something. What do you think about this? I have an idea. How did you start that?
One day we, just hanging out, and I turned around to him and said, what would you think if I wanted to be a surrogate? And his first thing was, well, what is that? And I told him, and he was like, have you lost your mind? No, you're not going to carry another man's baby.
Uh-oh.
And my response was, it's not just another man's baby, it's also another woman's baby. And I mean, he obviously knew that I've been an egg donor. So his whole thought was, oh my God, here you are, you're going to be a donor and you're going to carry the baby. And I kind of had to educate him that no, that's not how the process went. But I just kept pushing it and just, really letting him know how much I really wanted to do this and why I wanted to do it. And for me, I'm a spiritual person, and I feel that, everybody was put on this earth for a purpose, and I felt that that was one of the purpose that I was put on this earth to do. So.
You were definitely way ahead of your time, I think.
Yeah.
With that. Okay. And Nancy, I have a question for you. I was going to say a quick question, but I don't know how quickly you can answer it. What is the average time frame from the time a couple, or I would assume a couple, would come in and say, we want to be intended parents, we want a gestational surrogate. What would you be able to share with us a little bit about the average time span that it would take from this is our idea, we're going to see an agency, to yay, we're going to have a little bundle of joy in 9 months?
Generally, a lot of it will depend on what the qualifications or the stipulations are that the couple is thinking about. When you work with a surrogate who has, let's say, insurance, it's always a little harder to find. Insurance meaning that her insurance will cover, or most likely will cover, surrogate pregnancy. Very difficult to find now. Most of the insurance carriers do exclude surrogacy. I don't know how you feel about this, Eloise, but we're seeing it more and more. Maybe 10% of the surrogates will have insurance coverage that's probably okay. Either way, they have to have their own. So if a couple is looking for specifics, or if they are looking for more specifics or more selective, it will take longer to find a surrogate for them. Most of the agencies that recruit surrogates are always recruiting surrogates. So we're always talking to and interviewing surrogates. And not every surrogate's going to qualify, because not every surrogate wants to carry multiple. Not every surrogate would be willing to terminate a pregnancy if there's an anomaly with the baby. Not every surrogate would consider reduction if they transfer 2 embryos and 2 turns into 3. Most of the doctors that we work with and that our clients work with would prefer to have no more than 2. And actually, the FDA guidelines do state now that if someone's working with a donor and they're doing surrogacy, they transfer no more than 2. Most people do transfer 1. Their single embryo transfers are getting a little more popular because twin pregnancies are always considered high risk. Not always complicated, but they're always considered high risk. So a lot of that can depend on what couples are looking for. The waiting time for a surrogate isn't significant, and a lot of that will depend on where you're looking. But we tell people if they're looking for an Illinois surrogate, it's in the neighborhood of 3 months. We do have surrogates available. It's unusual that an agency would have surrogates available in our area, but we do have surrogates available. And then everybody, once they find out there's a surrogate available, they want to do this yesterday and get started as soon as possible. But just like with the donor cycle, it does take some time and coordination. The first month after the surrogate goes to the doctor is spent doing contracts. It's not that it's a difficult process or contentious. It just takes a long time, going back and forth a couple of times. So nothing is really done quickly, and I would say the best case scenario for someone looking for a surrogate is from choosing your surrogate until the transfer is about 3 or 4 months.
Okay. And Eloise, since you have done this 3 times, what would you say was your average, just from your personal experience, from we got the call that someone is interested in you being a GS for them, to actually carrying the baby?
Well, it really depended, because my first 2 intended parents, we used their own genetic material.
Mm-hmm.
So they also had to go through a cycle so that they can get the egg, get it fertilized, and so on. And we had to try, so actually the first 2 couples, we had to try 3 times each. I would get pregnant, but they were older. My first couple was in her 40s, and the second one was in her late 30s. And unfortunately, the egg quality wasn't what they wanted it to be, and so we had to keep trying. Luckily, we obviously were successful, but I would say from in the beginning, when we had first started trying with the testing and the contracts and psychological evaluations and so on, it probably took about 3 to 4 months.
Mm-hmm.
And then unfortunately, you'd have to start over again when it didn't work. My last couple, I was one of those that kind of made stipulations where I was only willing to do a single embryo transfer. I wasn't willing to carry multiple, I was older. I knew that it was my, third to see pregnancy. And I just had so much going on that I mean, twins was not ever going to be an option. I've carried twins the first time, so I have carried twins. And then I've carried two singletons, and it was just not something that I was willing to do. So my last couple, I really wasn't supposed to do it at all, and I kid you not, begged me for 7 months before I said yes. And then when I finally said yes, then it didn't take long after that, and they actually went through a frozen egg bank to select their donor, and they selected their donor, got fertilized, and on the first try did a single embryo transfer. So it really just depends. I mean, there's a lot of different factors. If you're going through a fresh cycle or a frozen cycle, if if you already have your eggs, if you're using donor eggs rather, or if you're using your own genetic material. I mean, there's a lot of factors, so there's not one particular time frame that will fit every single person.
Definitely. Okay. And I just want to say that from our chat room, Reverend Stacy has chimed in, and she said, Eloise, you are a fertility angel. So,
I agree.
So we certainly appreciate that. That is amazing. Again, just really both of you ladies ahead of your time. And we appreciate your expertise and experience tonight, because for a lot of us, this is kind of uncharted territory, and this conversation, I think, is definitely making it a lot easier for people who may be considering being surrogates, as well as women, couples, and families who may need surrogates. So I think this is just a really, really valuable conversation. Eloise, while we're on your personal experience, what were some of your feelings? How does it feel being a surrogate? Do you feel like you're babysitting for someone else, that you're just sort of looking after someone's child? Just I know that emotionally, I think that there would just be some questions and how you might handle that.
Well, yes, of course. I mean, I don't think you would be human if you didn't have some kind of feeling. Obviously, for me, I love all of my surrogate babies. But going into it, I also knew that these children are not my children. My children are the four that I have. They're not. I don't want to say they're not a part of me, because they will always be a part of my heart, but they were not a part of me. And like you said, I was just the babysitter. I did not have the same connection that I did with my own children. With my own children, when I was pregnant, I would speak to them and sing songs and all kinds of stuff. With the surrogacy pregnancy, yes, I would definitely speak to the babies. However, when I was speaking to them, I was speaking to them about their parents. Your mom and dad, and your mom and dad did this, or your mom and dad said hello, or, I started putting that, just putting that out there, so that one, for me, emotionally, at the end, it wasn't going to be a problem, because I didn't have that connection. And two, and I don't know if it was working or not, it just was in my mind, that maybe just spiritually or organically, that this child will hear mom and dad and not necessarily make a connection with me, but make a connection with his or her parents. My intended parents as well, whenever, they were local to me, so when we would see each other or whatever, I let them I gave them the freedom to touch on my stomach and speak to their child, and if they wanted me to put music on my stomach for them, or if they wanted to record something and have me play it on my stomach, I didn't have any problems with that. I did whatever they wanted me to do because this was their child. It was never mine.
Awesome, awesome. And we did have another question come in. I'm going to ask you first, Nancy. What advice would you give a woman or couple thinking about taking the route of donor?
With an egg donor?
Mm-hmm. I believe so. I believe it's an egg donor. Yes.
Well, first of all, it's always helpful if you can speak with other intended parents or parents who've gone through similar or the same situation. And most agencies can give you referrals because there are a lot of people who are willing to talk about their experience. And there is no such thing as a perfect donor. And most people don't realize this, but most intended parents who embark on this are not 100% into this. And we get that. We totally get that. This is like second choice, second best choice. And I tell intended parents, my advice is that you don't have to be 100% into this. You have to be more than 50% into this for that to occur. But it's normal to have nerves with excitement, and it's okay. And as you reach milestones, as you get through this process and see an ultrasound and then see a heartbeat on an ultrasound and then see growth on an ultrasound, things start to become more real and you start to accept it. But if you're not into it 100% as an intended parent, that's normal. No donor is going to be you. No donor is, maybe she'll be better if you have, genetic history. You can find someone without genetic history. But there will always be something. There will always be a glitch. And your child will love you no matter what. And you will not regret your decision.
Excellent, excellent advice. Thank you for that. And Eloise, what do you think are some of the greatest challenges or barriers for African Americans thinking about using a donor or a surrogate?
Well, first, I think that unfortunately the African American community tends to cause, the stigma that we don't need donors, that we don't have fertility problems, that we don't have issues that white women have, so there's not as many African American egg donors as there are Caucasian donors. Is it hard to find? Absolutely not. There are plenty, but there is not the same amount. And when it comes to gestational surrogacy, it's even less. There's not a lot of African American surrogates. And I think for one of the reasons, too, it's not because there aren't women out there who don't want to help. I think it has to do with, how am I going to tell my family that I want to be a surrogate to carry for somebody else? And like I said, there's that stigma that, we could easily get pregnant. We've never had any problems. I mean, we were the ones that, had taken care of other people's children and, were wet nurses and, and so all of these things I think are a factor, but there are plenty of African American egg donors. I can't say there are plenty of African American surrogates, but there are African American surrogates as well. And I think it always goes back to education and people being educated about the whole process.
Definitely, definitely. Well, ladies, thank you all both. Well, thank you both rather so much for joining us tonight. And we are right at 1 hour. Time flies when you're having fun and getting amazing information. So I wanted to thank you both for joining us tonight, and we just really appreciate your time. Anybody have any final thoughts they would like to share?
I agree with Eloise, and I think education is really important. And just ask questions and talk to people because there are so many people willing to talk to you.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, thank you both again. And of course, for our viewers and the folks who are going to be watching the replay, we can definitely get you Nancy's and Eloise's contact information if you have more questions. I want to also just let you know that Fertility for Colored Girls has some great events coming up. We are launching a chapter in Atlanta, Georgia on April 18th. We're very excited about that, and Eloise will actually be joining us. So it will be a fantastic opportunity to meet her if you live in Atlanta. So we have information about that on our website and, of course, on our Facebook page. We have prayer calls. We circle up virtually for prayer every Monday. That information is also on our Facebook page and on our website, www.fertilityforcoloredgirls.org. I cannot thank you, ladies, enough for your time tonight. Thank you to everyone who has tuned in. And please just keep fighting infertility and giving hope, spreading education and awareness around these types of challenges. And as both of you all have touched on, once we get that information out, we are able to empower women and families to build the families of their dreams. So thank you all again, and y'all have a wonderful, wonderful night.
Thank you, you too.
Great job.